Ever feel like you're drowning in a sea of friends, followers, and connections, but still feel kind of lonely? Well, today we're going to get into why that feeling is so common. It turns out the answer isn't in your phone, it's actually hardwired right into your brain. So you're scrolling through your social media. You've got hundreds, maybe even thousands of friends. You see a constant stream of updates from high school classmates, distant cousins, people you worked with 5 years ago. It's just this endless sea of faces. And yet, there's this weird feeling of being disconnected from it all. It's a total paradox, right? To be more connected than ever in human history, but to feel so thinly spread. Well, it turns out science has a number that explains this feeling perfectly. 150. That's the magic number. Seriously, according to a whole lot of research, this is pretty much the cognitive limit, the absolute max number of people your brain can handle maintaining real, stable, social relationships with. So where in the world did this number come from? And what does it mean for us today, in the age of the internet? Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, your 150 friend limit. This is also known as Dunbar's number. So this idea comes from a British anthropologist, a guy named Robin Dunbar. Back in the 90s, he found this really cool connection between the brain size of primates, specifically a part called the neocortex, the thinking part, and how big their social groups were. The bigger the neocortex, the bigger the tribe. So he did the math for humans, and bam, he landed on a number right around 150. The basic idea is that our brain literally doesn't have enough processing power to keep track of more people than that in a meaningful way. Now you might be thinking, sure, that was back in the 90s, before Facebook, before Instagram, before we all had our entire social network in our pocket. And that's exactly what researchers thought too. So Dunbar actually revisited his work decades later to see if social media had changed things. And get this, it hadn't. The number held up. Even with the ability to connect with thousands, our capacity for genuine relationships, the people we actually care about and would do a favor for, still hangs out right around 150. And this is where things get messy. Social media creates this thing called psychological nearness. It basically forces us to be digitally close to people way, way outside our core 150. Coworkers, old friends of friends, that person you met at a party once. It puts our old school primate brains in a situation it was never designed for. And honestly, it can start to breed resentment. We just aren't wired for this much low-level social upkeep. So it really begs the question, why this limit? Why are we built this way? And this question, well, it opens up a much, much bigger idea. One that helps explain not just our social circles, but so much of our modern life, from our anxiety to our diet. It's all about a massive conflict between our ancient programming and our super modern world. And that brings us to the main event here. Let's talk about the great mismatch. This is the core idea that explains the conflict between our ancient brains and the world we live in today. Just think of it like this. Your brain and your body are running on really old software. I'm talking ancient software, perfected over hundreds of thousands of years for a very specific world. But we're trying to run that same software in a totally different modern environment. An evolutionary mismatch happens when those traits that were once super useful for survival become, well, unhelpful or even actively harmful, just because the world changed way too fast for our biology to catch up. I mean, just look at the difference. Our brains came of age in a world of small, tight-knit tribes, around 150 people. Sound familiar? We were always moving, walking for miles. Food was hard to come by, and dangers were real and immediate, like a lion in the grass. Now, flash forward to today, we've got global networks, we sit on chairs all day, food is everywhere and hyper-processed, and our biggest threats are abstract things like emails and deadlines. This right here, this is the mismatch, and it's at the root of so many of our modern problems. Okay, so let's zoom in a bit. How exactly does this mismatch put our brains, specifically, under so much pressure? Well, evolutionary psychiatry has a great way of explaining this. It's called the smoke detector principle. Think about it. Your anxiety is basically like a smoke detector that's just a little too sensitive. The kind that goes off when you're just searing a steak. It's annoying, right? But it's designed that way for a reason. Because the cost of a false alarm, a little bit of smoke, is low, but the cost of missing a real fire, that's catastrophic. This is the bet our brain made millions of years ago. Imagine you're an ancestor and you hear a rustle in the grass. If it's just a harmless monkey and you run away, what's the cost? A few calories, no big deal. But if that rustle is a lion and you don't run, the cost is, everything. So evolution gambled, and it decided it's way better to have 100 false alarms than one fatal miss. The problem now is that our modern world is packed with non-lethal rustles, emails, traffic, notifications that are constantly setting off this lion-level alarm system. And this mismatch framework helps explain so much more. For instance, some scientists theorize that depression might be an overactive version of an ancient submission signal, a way to de-escalate conflict in a small tribe, but something that becomes completely debilitating in a huge, complex society. Or think about traits linked to ADHD, like shifting your attention quickly and seeking out new things. For a hunter-gatherer, constantly scanning the horizon for food or danger, incredibly useful. For a kid expected to sit still in a classroom for 8 hours, not so much. And hey, it's not just our brains. Our bodies are also having a really tough time with this whole mismatch situation. Let's look at how they're in conflict with the modern world. For starters, our bodies were built to move, to walk, run, and hunt for miles every single day. Now, most of us are stuck in chairs. Our bodies also evolved during times of scarcity, so they became incredibly good at storing fat to survive the next famine. But now we live in a world of Uber Eats, and that famine never comes. And finally, our digestive systems evolved to handle real, whole foods from nature. Now they're being flooded with processed stuff and concentrated sugars they have no idea what to do with. Okay, so this all might sound a little depressing, like we're doomed, right? We're running ancient software in a world it was never built for. But it's not that simple. The question is, how do we thrive within this mismatch? The first step is to accept a really hard truth, which someone online put perfectly. Evolution doesn't care about your happiness, not one bit. Its one and only goal is for you to pass on your genes. The traits we have exist because they helped our ancestors survive and have babies, not because they made them feel fulfilled or joyful. And knowing that, that's a game changer. But right after that dose of cold, hard reality comes the solution, and it came from the very same person. They said the more they treated themselves like the animal they are, the better they felt. Things like intense exercise, real food, sunlight, and genuine social time with their tribe. These aren't modern day luxuries or life hacks. They are, quite literally, biological commands. They're what our ancient software needs to run properly. So look, this isn't about giving up your phone and trying to live in a cave. It's about living consciously. It's a pretty simple three-step process, really. First, just acknowledge you're running on ancient software. Second, start to spot the modern traps that are designed to hijack that software. Things like super sugary foods or the social overload from trying to keep up with 500 people. And then third, do your best to align your life with your actual evolved needs. And really, that's what this is all about. This isn't a story about how we're all doomed. It's more like a user's manual for being a human in the 21st century. It gives you a whole new way to look at your own life, your own struggles, and a new framework for making choices that actually work with your biology instead of against it. So the question to leave you with is this. Knowing you're running on ancient software, how are you going to navigate your modern world?